أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم Assalamu alaikum everyone. Inshallah, we'll be continuing from the supreme sign today. We're going to be continuing from the eighth degree. The author has been talking about a voyager, a traveler, right? Questioning the universe, the cosmos around him in search of his creator. And he's been going through different realms, let's say, of creation, right? Looking at the mountains, the clouds, the rains, the vegetative realm, the animal realm. And we discussed, especially, I guess, the animal realm last week, animals and birds, right? And he's looking into creation, questioning it, seeing what they declare to him, what speech they offer, right? And how that may bring him to an understanding of their source of existence. Um, any thoughts from last week? Any points that stayed with you that you might want to reiterate, or any questions that remained as well in general? Do you want to say anything?
No, no. Maybe even before last week, because I think it helps to understand last week, like 2 weeks ago, like we were studying trees and plants, and there I remember something that still stays with me is this approach of when Nursi is saying there are some truths we witness when we look at the universe, when we look at creation. We can also take that, there are laws we witness, or there are things that we always see to be there. And one of these laws, these truths, is this law of generosity, this truth that we see that there's constant generosity being placed. And when it looks to trees, we're going through heat waves and difficulties. It's hard to stay outside, but then you look at trees and plants and they're always outside and you see they're being taken care of. You see that on days like this, the rain comes or the cloud comes. You see that those trees and plants, like, there's so much art in them as well, and there's like this generosity. And then next we looked at animals and birds, and also there we saw that there are these truths if we just look at them in these animals and birds. Like you see, Nursi says in their own way, they're saying la ilaha illallah, they're saying there's no god but he, oh, there's no god but God. And we looked at how we could see that. And when we look at animals and maybe birds specifically, because in Philly we see a lot of birds, is we see this name of joy, this name of beauty, this name of art, how a bird can fly so well. We even thought of mosquitoes and how, even though they might be annoying, these mosquitoes are so artfully created in such a tiny thing. There's so much life and it's so active and it's doing so much. And it's actually so elegant in its own design. And all of these are speaking in its own way, saying there's no God but He. And in fact, I should be hearing them say there's no God but He, just in that how purposefully they were designed and created. And then also last week we talked about how, uh, you know, everything, like there's so much differentiation, like there's so many differences, so many different types of frogs, so many different types of fish, so many different types of butterflies. And it seems that there is a statement being made in all these different types of them. Like there's so many different colors and species and styles, and they all look very composed, like well composed in their own form, like for their own function. Like a bird, this example brother used to give, like a bird, like the soul of a bird, the behavior of a bird perfectly fits a bird, but then the behavior of a lion perfectly fits the lion. Like they're just perfectly designed in that way, and they have their own behaviors, and I guess like I don't know, consciousness to go with it. So we just see that all of these, it shouldn't just stay at the level of, yeah, this just exists or it had to happen or it just happened by chance, which doesn't make sense, but rather this is existing and what does it mean? What is it saying? Just trying to listen to that.
Jazakallah khair. And also, like, along that note of the many differentiations and endless species that we face, like, we enjoy all of them too, right? We have this immediate relationship with them. Like, I remember we had watched this documentary of like this one guy who was just obsessed with toads, right? maybe obsessed is not the right word, but he was just spending his life like investigating different species of toads and whatnot. And it's a different kind of frog, yeah. And he wanted to like climb this mountain just because he knew there was a species of toads or frogs there that he wanted to investigate, right? Um, and so like there is truly like an endless differentiation that is offered to us through creation, right? Whether it's animals, insects, um, you know, weather types, or what have you, and we want to know all of them because they all carry different qualities, right? They all communicate, even if they're similar to each other, they communicate different new qualities of the one who gives existence to them, and we want to come to know all of it, right? Which shows this desire to come to know our creator as much as we can as well. Please, yeah.
Very short. Like when we look at all these different type of the animals, all these different species, it's really like a fashion show that you're watching. And with with the artists, for instance, there are some artworks which are good, and there are some other artworks that are not that so good, right? But when you look at these different species, you cannot say that this didn't like it's not good. So that was a mistake with that one, for instance. You don't say that. You can spend your hours just to study one species, and then when you look at another species, all these different colors, shapes, and so on and so forth, you can still spend another several hours there. There are no such thing as like, yeah, of course, everybody would say this is more beautiful for me and this is less beautiful for me. But when you look from the perspective of the artwork, each of them are the masterpieces. So that's very interesting. Like, it's obviously not a product of any process, let alone a random process. It's not a product of any process that we know of.
Sakla, yeah.
So I guess I was thinking along that line of also what Brother Burkan just said, but what I found fascinating is the author, when we kind of goes through his Miraj journey, and he starts with kind of talking about the mountain, then he goes to the ocean, but actually it's the opposite. I reversed it in my head. But what was interesting to me was he used things that I recognized and things that I thought was ordinary, and I don't really question it. Like mountains, he says like as pegs, and then they're kind of like an anchor. But then I'm like, yeah, and I just stopped there. But then the idea that does it have to be that way, I think is what's fascinating about the author, is like this idea that I've accepted almost like this should happen. Of course it should happen, but why should it? And I think he gives the same example with the ocean, where he's like, why isn't it overflowing? Like that is an option also. And it is shown in places where oceans do overflow and can damage things. So this contrast of like, it doesn't always have to be this way, and it's actually being maintained in a specific manner for a specific reason. So I really like that, like the way he tells those specific things.
Jazakallah. And I think we had discussed this in earlier weeks as well, is that like these are not just random citations that we find in the text, right? But these are directly coming from Quranic verses, right? So the Quran is drawing our attention to the mountains. The Quran is drawing our attention to the birds, right? And there are like numerous verses on just descriptions of creation, of the world and beings that exist around us. So how do we understand them? How do we enter into a dialogue with them so that we can know ourselves and know our source as well? Any other comments before we move on? Okay, inshallah, then let's continue. Do we have a volunteer to read the text? Anyone who wants to read? Dua, yeah.
That meditative voyager, in order to advance farther in the infinite degrees and countless luminous stages of knowledge of God, then wished to enter the world of men, the realm of humanity. Humanity, heeded by the prophets, invited him, and he accepted the invitation. Looking first at the stopping place of the past, he saw that all of the prophets, the most luminous and perfect of humankind, were reciting in chorus, "No God but He," and making remembrance of God. With the power of their brilliant, well-attested, and innumerable miracles, they were proclaiming God's unity. And in order to advance man from the animal stage to angelic degree, they were instructing men and summoning them to belief in God. Kneeling down in that school of light, he too paid heed to the lesson. He saw that in the hand of each of those teachers, the most exalted and renowned of all celebrated human beings, there were numerous miracles, bestowed on them by the Creator of all being as a sign confirming their mission. Further, a large group of men, a whole community, had confirmed their claims and come to belief at their hands. A truth assented to and confirmed by these hundreds of thousands of serious and veracious individuals, unanimously and in full agreement, was bound to be firm and definitive. He understood, too, that the people of misguidance, in denying a truth attested and affirmed by so many veracious witnesses, were committing a most grievous error, indeed crime, and were therefore deserving of a most grievous punishment. He recognized, by contrast, those who assented to the truth and believed in it as being the most true and righteous, and a further degree of the sanctity of belief became apparent to him. Yes, the infinite miracles bestowed by God on the prophets, each one being like a confirmation of their mission. The heavenly blows dealt to their opponents, each being like a proof of their truthfulness. Their individual perfections, each one being like an indication of their righteousness. Their veracious teachings, the strength of their faith, a witness to their honesty. Their supreme seriousness and readiness to self-sacrifice. The sacred books and pages held by their hands. Their countless pupils who, through following their paths, attain truth, perfection, and light, thus proving again the truthfulness of their teachings. The unanimous agreement of the prophets, those most earnest warners, and their followers in all positive matters. Their concord, mutual support, and affinity. All of this constitutes so powerful a proof that no power on earth can confront it, and no doubt or hesitation can survive it. Our traveler understood further that inclusion of belief in all the prophets among the pillars of belief represents another great source of strength. Thus he derived great benefit of faith from their lessons, in expression of which we said in the 8th degree of the first station, "There is no God but God, to the necessity of whose existence and unity points the unanimity of all the prophets, through the power of their luminous miracles that both affirm and are affirmed."
Maybe. Yeah, okay. I mean, you already had the perfect stop, so I didn't need to say anything. Jazakumullah khair. Thank you for that beautiful reading. So of course you're under no obligation, but anything you want to say about it? No? Okay. Anyone who is intently listening who wants to first impressions?
Not going to
Hmm?
put pressure and say,
I mean, maybe I should. No. This is a friendly environment. What we see here, though, right, is that now he's talking about suddenly prophets. And initially, it might seem like, okay, well, how do we transition from all these different aspects of creation, right? We're talking about mountains, seas, animals, to now prophets. Like, where did that come from? But in one sense, what I'm getting from this is that, like, it's not just me and the world, right? I am in need of instruction. I am in need of guidance. I am in need of teachers or a teacher who can help me read, right? The world, who can help me see things as they really are. And that's the case with, every other aspect, as we've talked about before. Like every other aspect of my life, I easily, very readily accept that I need a teacher, right? Whether it's, I need to learn how to cook. Okay, YouTube's my teacher. I need to learn how to construct the house. YouTube's my teacher. I need to go to school. All right, I have the professors. I have the instructors, whatnot. So when it comes to understanding my existence, understanding the existence of everything around me, it also makes sense that I would need someone who knows how to read it, who knows how to interact with that creation, who's also been taught that, right, to also teach me. And he says, let's see. Right, it says they were instructing human beings and summoning them to belief in God. So instructing and also then calling others as well to, hey, like this is how you can make sense of your existence. This is how you can find the answers to the questions that you have. Those are some initial thoughts. I mean, there's a lot that he's writing about, and we can maybe talk about like miracles as well at one point, but any other thoughts on like why he's bringing this topic in, how we can make sense of it? Zoe, you want to add something?
I've been thinking about something like for a while now, and like I don't know if it's super related to the topic, but I thought of it when you were talking about when you were making your comment. But I've been thinking that people who are like successful in their career or like whatever they like set their mind to, like for example, even making money or whatever, it's not always the most hardworking person who reaps the or who gets the most success. Sometimes, like in my experience in life, I've seen people who are super hardworking and other people who are smart, and the ones who are smart are usually the ones who get most of the results, or like get the results in a faster time. And it made me think that, you know, like that's sort of like what Miraj is, though, you know, like it's what resources can you utilize in order to get to the point that you want to get to in like perhaps a smarter and quicker manner. Because like I'm thinking, for example, like I've been painting for a while now, and painting for me has always been, okay, you know, let's just figure it out as I go. I don't have training in acrylic painting. So I just like it's just trial and error. And I've learned some techniques on my own, but then the other day I was on YouTube and I was watching someone paint, and they were like telling all these techniques that they had learned. And I was like, wait, this is so interesting. And it really like made that process so much faster for me. So that's what I'm thinking, like from your comment as well, that I can look at the world and the world will tell me about God. But God has also given me resources through which I can get to him in a smarter way and also a faster way. And that is, you know, his book, his prophets. So yeah, that's sort of what I was thinking.
Jazakumullah khair. And also that you know, the author here, Nursi, is constantly saying, okay, creation is pointing to La ilaha illahu, right? That there must be a source that creates, that gives existence to these things, right? But then, so I can have belief in that source, but then how do I live with this belief, right? How does this belief change my day-to-day life? How do I engage? How does this belief reflect into my actions? And that's where I truly need that teacher, that instruction. So it's not even just a shortcut, but also something essential that I'm left without if I think I can approach it purely through myself, right? I think, did you have a comment, please?
So the verse that we started with was saying that the seven heavens and the earth and all that is in them extol and glorify him. And there's nothing but glorifies him with praise, but you understand not their glorifying. He is most forbearing, most forgiving. So, and we started with the skies, the thunder, the rivers, and we started learning their language. And last week when we were discussing animals, we were referring to Sulaiman alayhi salam's story where he was taught the tongue of birds. So we are just trying to listen to them and say, well, tell me about my maker. So who made me, who made you? So we were trying to have a conversation with them. Naturally, we would like to talk to human beings as well. Like from among humans, there should also be ones who are going to tell me about my maker. And of course, I'm not going to pick a random person for that, because when it comes to human beings, since the choice is now being part of it, human can corrupt, like, I mean, every baby they're beautifully created in the best form, but depending on how we make our choices, we can become a good person or a bad person. So I say that there must be some people who are worthy to listen to about this topic too. So this is why he didn't randomly pick somebody to listen to.
Like so far, he was listening to the whole creation. But when he came to humanity, he said, from among humans, prophets called him, saying that, look, we have a message to you. So it's also interesting. He didn't go and knock doors and try to find the person. The person who has the message is declaring this message too. And this should be the case because my creator made even the bird to declare his name to me. The thunder is praising him. Definitely from among humans, the same maker would make people who declares his name. So, and now this Voyager is going and saying that, like, from among humans, who is going to tell me about my maker? And then the prophets say, okay, you are ready to listen. So it looks like you're open and you got the point. You are in expectation that a human being is going to talk to you about your creator. Come, we will talk to you about this. But right there, of course, now the question becomes, how would I know that person is my creator's envoy and not just a charlatan? So I guess this is where now the miracles will get into the picture.
Jazakallah khair. And so like that also means that, okay, it's not that I'm gonna try to climb some secluded mountain, find a guy in a hut. It's like, oh, you were the teacher I was looking for, but kept hidden throughout the centuries. No, it has to be, as you said, someone who is declaring that message, right? Not in their own name, but in the name of the creator. And here, so on the topic of miracles, it's interesting because he repeats it twice, right? He says, where was it? Oh yeah, that the infinite miracles bestowed by God on the prophets, peace be upon them, each one being like a confirmation of their mission, right? And then also their individual perfections being indications of their righteousness. So there's different facets to how do I understand, how can I verify, in fact, that this person is a prophet, that this person is a messenger or an appointed teacher from my creator to me, right? And one of those, as the author says, is miracles. But how do I understand that? How do I verify that, right? Especially when I am now living here. Now, what are these miracles that I can see, witness for myself as well? Any thoughts? Yes, but any thoughts beyond?
Someone speak in silence.
No, his thoughts are important too, but there's different people here and more exciting voices perhaps. Okay, let's go with the brother and then we can go.
Right, so I think for me, Imam Nursi talked about the miracles, but sometimes, like, as a kid, when you hear these stories, they do seem like stories. And I'm really glad that he pointed out that these aren't just a story that was just told by a person. These stories were confirmed by hundreds, if not thousands, or hundreds of thousands of Sahaba, or the people during that time that actually witnessed it. And these people were veracious, these people were intelligent people, these people were veracious people. So you need to, like, try not to think about them as just stories in history. These are actual events that happened. And hence, I feel like that should signify their miraculous nature, that these are actual events that happened and narrated by hundreds of thousands of people.
Jazakumullah khair. And also, like, this was something that he had mentioned I don't know if we had read it. I guess we probably had read it in the introduction of the Supreme Sign, where he was talking about negation and affirmation, right? And like, if he was giving the example of, let's say, the moon, right? If someone sees the moon, if two people see it, that's enough. But negation is not necessarily strengthened by number. So I'm not sure if that's necessarily related to the point he's making here, but I thought that was maybe helpful to remember as well. Abdurrahman, and then we'll listen to Kadir after.
I mean, I just kind of had questions, I think maybe a comment, but I mean, initially when we read this, it seems to make sense. As Brother Yusuf said, okay, we looked at all these trees, we looked at the mountains, the seas, the rivers, we looked everywhere. We listened to them because they're saying something, so we listened to them. So it makes sense, like, okay, the next step is now look at humans. because apparently humans are also being created, and you'd expect humans are also saying something, right? But then immediately my mind first goes to, well, I don't want to listen to humans, or humans are always flawed, or they're always lying, or I feel like, no, I don't want to take any messages from them, or like, what can they tell me? Like my mind is like, first place it would go to is like, I don't have anything to listen to from humans. So there's like an odd perception from my side, I noticed. And maybe there's a difference versus how I listen to a river and a tree versus now how I should be looking at a human versus and then the second thing is like when we talk about miracles, it's like, okay, look at all these miracles and all these people that followed them. I mean, this topic of miracles, I'm sure it's very loaded, but one, Nursi says infinite miracles. I mean, I don't know what he means by infinite miracles, so I have a question there because from what I know, I mean, there's definitely a finite number of miracles that have been narrated. Maybe the ones that are even like very strong narrations are even much less. And then the ones that are relevant to my day-to-day life are even like almost none of them are relevant to me. Like, so they don't really have much impact on me. So I don't really see these infinite miracles. And then he says, you look at these pupils and how beautiful they're following and how it helps them. And I'm saying, sure, it sounds really nice, but is this even how verifiable is it? I don't know. Is it something that I can truly witness from the outside? I guess like there seems to be this problem where I can't just look at other humans and somehow see that their belief or the way what they're talking about, it really says La ilaha illallah or something. If I just like look at it normally. So I think there's like a different way here, which I'm trying to understand.
Jazakallah khair. I think those are really good questions. So I'm just going to say them again before I give the mic to Kadir, inshallah, I haven't forgotten. So the first question, and correct me, is what is the difference between how I listen, how I engage with creation like a river or a mountain versus how what I would like my way of verifying from a human being, right? And then secondly, how am I to understand the infinite miracles of prophets as mentioned by the author, especially when, you know, the historical miracles are obviously limited in number. So how do I understand miracle here? Was there anything else, Ben? Okay, so let's think about those two questions and then Kadir, please go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question kind of similar, I don't know, but how does studying about humans relate to the ayat that we are studying, like 1744? Is that it says, but you understand not their glorifying. So, okay, first we were discussing about the other inanimate objects, I would say, like, okay, rivers or mountains or things like those. But now that we're at humans, how does this relate into the ayat? Do we not understand like how humans are praising their creator, or like how does this relate? Why is the author going to humans now?
Jazakallah khair. I'm just gonna say something and then you can I appreciate the enthusiasm. It's encouragement for others as well. But I was just gonna say that I think that's a good question. I think one, we should also, like Abdurrahman made the point of like humans are also creation, right? So sometimes glorification is beyond just pure speech, right? Even perhaps an unbeliever can be glorifying God in the way that they exist, even if their speech does not align with the reality that they exemplify. That's what I just wanted to add. And then Brother Burkan can kindly give us his example.
So this young girl, she has a language of her own, and I don't mean the sounds that she produces, the way she behaves and so on. And there's a a very extensive the domain in psychology, developmental psychology they call, and they they want to understand how they develop. So they look at the children, and children are telling them something, but obviously all these people writing all these textbooks and so on and so forth, they understand nothing of that language. With every action of hers, she's glorifying the maker. she needs something, and the need is created in her mom, right? Her needs are changing. Her needs of the body is changing. He would know better, our doctor. Like a nutritional, the needs and someone are changing in her body. The milk produced in her mom's body is changing in the same way, like simultaneously, right? Somebody look at this example and see how this glorifies the Creator. How this is the example of La ilaha illallah. But some other people studying this for years, they understand nothing.
Jazakallah khair. I think we have some psychologists in the room, some developmental psychologists too, if they'd like to say anything or add eventually at one point. But if not, then we can have.
Yeah, I just had a question about when we said the idea that like when we're looking at humans now, we care about a specific human. We're not just listening to anyone, but I guess kind of clarification for that in the text in the sense that it says further, a large group of men, a whole community had confirmed their claims and came to believe at their hands. So I guess like if a whole community is, what kind of community are we looking at then? Because I don't know if that part is also reflecting on the prophets. Like then I misread it. So obviously my question will be irrelevant. But if it's just the community, then how is it like there's no way to decide this is ultimately like who I should listen to? There's still that bias of like, well, how do I know this person is who I should listen to if they're just another community that has went through this process? Like, do I need their affirmation? Can I just have my own kind of belief and go with that? So I guess that would be my question.
So is the question here, how would I trust the community, right? In one sense, that's what you're saying? Yeah, there you go.
I guess the prophet one, there's like credentials, let's say, right? And there's this feeling of like, okay, you have a nice resume, I can trust this resume. And then there's this sense of like community, and I'm like, great. But then I remember the first time I actually attended this lecture, I was like, there was this idea of like, should you just listen to being born into the religion isn't enough, right? Like, and so I am gonna assume this community, like, what if they're just like me? They were born into this community. Like, so I don't think there's enough explanation in the text to specify that there is specific types of like mentors that we are looking forward to, especially if it's not referring to the prophet. So I just didn't know how would you, I guess, navigate that part of it.
Yeah. I think I'll have two quick comments to that question, because I think it's important. One, I would think that if we think about it in terms of specifically the prophets community, right, then we see a group of people who are radically transformed, right, in a period of time that is completely, that hasn't been replicated, right, transformed in behavior, in life, in ethics, in all forms. So when it says a whole community had confirmed their claims and come to belief at their hands, so that belief is being reflected into their lives. So it's not so much that, oh, they're just repeating it, right? But their actions and the way that they're living, their state of being is reflecting, is a resounding affirmation of that truth that they're also declaring with their tongue. But also I think it's the text as we continue will explain this a little further as well, that if we think about communities more broadly, just in terms of community of scholars, right? It talks about the ulama at one point, community of anyone who has studied, who has thought seriously about these matters, also confirming it. So, maybe we'll get to that point as well, but I think the text will further explain what it means by that as well, unless others want to add something. And then I saw her hand first, and then I will give it to you. Yep.
Okay. I think what attracted my attention is where it says in order to advance man from the animal state to angelic degree. And I think it can also act as a criteria, and perhaps it kind of invites us to also ask, like, what does it mean to be in an animalistic state, or what does it mean to be an angelic degree? And perhaps one way of understanding, like, if you know, in an animal-like state, which is if I think that they go through what I would consider their life cycle, right? They grow, they mate, reproduce, and then eventually they die. And versus an angelic degree, and I think based on previous discussions as well, kind of like the meaning side of kind of what all of these, like looking at a young child, toddler, and reading what her actions and her relationship with her parents exemplify what she's kind of saying in her state of being, kind of showing that other the angelic degree, if you will, or other words, being a witness to the manifestation of the qualities of her creator that are being exemplified. What I'm trying to get at, I can use that as a criterion to also, it's not just any Voyager, it's a meditative Voyager, right? There's a degree of introspection going there, but I think I can also use that as a way to confirm the reality that is being invited to me by the Prophet or by the communities as well. In terms of what is happening. So I think, you know, alongside with what you're saying, I can't just accept something just because it's accepted by a mass of people. But at the same time, perhaps maybe the note that was made before, which is like, you know, if you see the moon and you can confirm that you saw the moon, then one confirmation is enough. But if 1,000 people also confirm it, then there's kind of, I guess, different degrees of confirmation there.
Yeah, I think the last thing that you said, Imam Nursi, in one of the discussions we discussed this, negation, when there are people negating something, they're saying it doesn't exist. Their claims do not add up. They don't add power to their claim. But however, if there's a community of people who see the same thing, those claims add up. So I feel like with this, Imam Nursi was just, at least my understanding is, he was just trying to say that since he was talking about miracles, and then he talked about all these people who saw those miracles, and I think it just refers back to his original claim that all these hundreds of thousands of people unanimously and in full agreement seeing all these things makes it more firm and definitive that these miracles existed and happened, which also confirm their prophethood in a way that Allah chose these people and granted them these miracles. And that should increase the sanctity of our belief in the prophets and their miracles. So I feel like that's what he meant by community. At least that's what I understood.
So, like there are academic advisor trees. Like I am student of this, he was a student of this one, he was a student of that one. So that lineage of academic tree is really defining sort of your value. Like if you are like a grand academic child of a Nobel laureate, it's better than being academic child of just any professor. So in here, they came up with a teaching and many people confirmed their teaching. So it was not like, oh, some idea and here and there you find a few citations for them. They became like a mainstream, like top citation receiver papers, like showing the quality of the work that they presented in a sense. So I'll just read it because he was saying that they are claiming La ilaha illahu. This was the claims of those prophets. This sentence is coming after this, saying that a large group of men, a whole community had confirmed their claims. What is their claim? Their claim was La ilaha illahu, and they confirmed this claim. And confirmation in here is in the sense of we bear witness to. So it shouldn't be simply saying that, I guess it is, or yeah, repeat after me, ashhadu. Like it's not just a lip service, but somebody confirming La ilaha illahu. So in this sense, saying that, yeah, I agree with this, I also arrived to the same conclusion. So we talk about reproducible science. So it is like many people have listened to this and said that I agree with this conclusion. But I guess in this sense, in the original text, he uses the word tasdiq, and tasdiq is confirmation. And like in Islamic tradition, for example, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq is a very important figure. Why? Because he was so, like, his confirmation to the Prophet was so central. Sometimes it's mentioned as blindly he was accepting whatever it is, but like, it doesn't really fit bearing witness, the profile of bearing witness. It doesn't fit that. But it should rather be that, yes, from this mouth, I have never heard any lie. It's always confirmable, trustworthy. And yes, I agree with whatever he says. So this is confirmation here. And like otherwise, you can come up with bright ideas. And nobody pays attention to what you say. Oh, they didn't understand me. And then you just try to satiate your discomfort, psychological discomfort. But they came up with a message, and so many people confirmed their message, saying that, yes, I agree with this message. It's relevant to me. So in this sense, the community becomes a support for their message.
Jazakallah khair. I know this was a really important point. I know the conversation is just getting good and we're leaving off at a riveting point, but let's break for Maghrib, and then with excitement we will listen to Brother Birkan, who will hopefully not forget his valuable contribution, inshallah. So if you don't have wudu, please make wudu. understand how does
Now,
okay. Assalamu alaikum. So we're just continuing from where we left off, inshallah, brother Vikram.
Jazakallah khairan. Maybe we can start with this community part. We already explained this, the confirmation part. Like they are not just regular people, but they are confirming it as well. And there is also the continuation of this the sentence. Whole community had confirmed their claims and come to believe at their hands. I guess that's part also important. In the original, in the Turkish, it's even stronger. It's like they confirmed and believed in it. So I think when it put that way, this is a very strong condition. It's not any light condition. So Brother Yusuf mentioned this scientific, the way of dealing with things and have people confirm things and so on and so forth. What is mentioned here, I would say at least a few-fold stronger than that even. And what I mean with that, so for instance, if you go to the academic circle, and especially you're talking about people, let's say, about a topic which is not their expertise directly. And in today's the world, finding a group of people with the same expertise is very hard anyway. Everybody has expertise in something else, like in tiny things. So almost everything is beyond your expert. So when you look at it from this perspective. But anyway, so for instance, talk to any the scientist about, let's say, genes, right? Most of the things they will say, and this is like my first-hand experience, I'm not claiming this is true for everybody, but almost everybody I interacted with, a big community. So for most of the people, they believe in genes the way they are described in science books and so on and so forth. It's at least 85%, it's all taking things granted. It is published, it's been keep publishing, so it must be true what they say about this or that. So this is usually the attitude. If you ask me, this is good enough. As a scientist, this is good enough to believe in such a thing. But what is explained here, you can take it this way. Somebody comes and asks you about something about the genes. And you say, okay, let me see it myself first, right? You grab the microscope, you study the genes, and then you make some experiments. And then you don't stop there. You apply it to yourself, whatever it means, right? You do some stem cells research and you apply it. You probably will blow up, doesn't matter. But you do apply it to yourself and then confirm this way as well. And you say, okay, yeah, it is working. This is the confirmation the author is talking about. So a prophet comes with a message, comes with the claim, and then you say, okay, let me see whether it makes sense or not. You compare it to your entire life, and then apply it to yourself, coming to belief part, and you say that, okay, yeah, this is true. And now we are talking about a large group of such people. So we call it as whole community, but the word community is different than just group of people. We are a community, for instance, let's say, or we say scientific community, right? The word used here is ummah, right? So a scientific community, for instance, is not an ummah. It doesn't satisfy the necessary requirements to become an ummah. a Pakistani community or Turkish community, whatever, they're not ummah. They just made up things. You don't care about what they say, right? When we talk about this community, we're talking about the people, each individual. That's the definition of ummah. We're talking about the definitions. We're not talking about what happened in Saudi Arabia or whatever. We're talking about the definitions. Every individual of this community confirmed it for himself or herself, came to the belief and wholeheartedly say that, yes, this is true. And I'm following it, I'm living it to some different degrees. Not everybody same, of course, but every individual has this, the criterion. Now we are talking about the ummah. So it's not just large group of people. That's what I understood, at least. Going back to the very beginning about the prophets, I think it was very interesting. The Voyager, she wanted to know about the humanity and see what humanity would offer him to know the Creator. To know her Creator. And as the other people already highlighted, I think it was Yusuf mentioned it, that these prophets came to the Voyager and say that, okay, let me introduce you to the humanity. Let me tell you what humanity is. So I think this is a very interesting thing, because we don't find such thing in our lives. People don't claim to, the knowing about the humanity and then try to introduce you to humanity, what humanity means, and so on and so forth. One important, the future of Prophet ﷺ was, it's always mentioned in Quran, that he was visiting marketplaces. But this is how it is described in Quran. He visits in marketplaces, talk to people, eat with them, and so on and so forth. So what is narrated there is that he goes, joins the people, and delivers a message. We don't see this with other people. So for instance, the closest people, type of people would come to mind who can explain humanity would be philosophers, for instance. All they do, just sitting on their chairs, right? You wouldn't find them in the marketplace. They wouldn't come and try to teach this guy how to become a better person. They wouldn't do that. They wouldn't even care. Just write some papers or the book. If he's lucky, has the money, enough money to buy them, he will read them. So I think even that single property itself, the prophets coming and saying that, oh, I see that you are looking for something. Let me explain you. I think by itself, it's a good indication that he is an, not assigned, but appointed person feeling this responsibility, duty.
Jazakumullah khair. So what I'm getting from this is you're saying that Socrates could have been a prophet. Meets the marketplaces, talking to the youth. I'm just there. But no, Jazakallah khair. And I think these are important points. Any other thoughts, questions?
The way I was thinking of is when we were doing the retreat on intellect, we talked about, it wasn't, my group was intellect, but we talked about how there are a few different things that come together to confirm or to strengthen your iman. So it's not just, like what you read or what you are being told, but it's also your aql, and then your fitra confirms it. And in a similar manner, like in this text, the the author isn't saying the only thing that's convincing this person or compelling him to think is the fact that a large number of people are accepting the faith. To start off, it's, these prophets, what sort of a character do they have? Are they truthful? Like, what's up? And they are being bestowed with miracles, which is unlike anything these people have seen. And then they also see that there are a huge number of people who have confirmed the truth, and who are, accepting it and living it. And then he also mentions the character of these people, or like the nature of these people. They are serious and veracious individuals, which means that not only have they confirmed the truth, they are living it, and they're living it in a manner perhaps that has changed their lives maybe 180 degrees, and which is what we saw, and we see it even today with reverts. But more specifically with the people of Quraysh, they were living devious lifestyles, and they changed all of a sudden, and they stopped drinking, stopped doing all of these things that they were so dependent on. So it's that, and it's also, he talks also about the people of misguidance, and he contrasts them, he compares them to people of the truth. What are the two like? And the people of misguidance are denying the truth. And again, like taking an example from the prophet's life, or like other prophets' lives as well, they would ask to see miracles. And then when the prophets would show them these miracles, they would still be like, oh, you know what? You're doing magic. If you were going to deny it, like, why ask to see it in the first place? So they were being, it wasn't like they didn't understand, but rather they were denying it, and they were being insincere. And compared to that, the author says, by contrast, those who assented to the truth and believed in it as being the most true and righteous. So he describes them as being true and righteous. So I think all these things lead to, or like get on top of each other, and they lead to a confirmation of the fact that, there is something compelling about about the message that this person has brought forth, that is, like inviting all these people to confirm it, completely change their ways. So yeah.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. And within the Quran as well, that's why disbelief, kufr, is not just, oh, like, I'm not convinced, right? It's someone who covers up the truth. They witness it, but they want to ignore or cover it up. One other point that I wanted to make on just like how we approach human beings versus the rest of creation is that, like, creation cannot deceive me, right? Like, it doesn't, there's no faculty of choice that's happening to the extent that, like, human beings choose, right? Like, we can deceive, we can utter things, even if our state of being does not deceive, like, we can utter things that are false, yet, like, a hummingbird can't deceive me. It will be perfect in its hummingbirdness, and it will proclaim all of its qualities, because its speech is a speech of a dispositional nature anyway. So anytime I interact with creation, it makes its glorifications very clear, right? Like the strawberry says, look how beautifully I'm created. Look at my color, look at my taste, look at, especially in the summertime, my sweetness, my scent, like I go perfect in these desserts, I'm perfectly matched with your nutritious needs. Like it doesn't lie to me. It can't deceive me in any way. But with human beings, I need that confirmation, right? That as Brother Yusuf emphasized, that tasdiq of like being able to confirm it, verify it, right? See, and as Dua, you cited, like not just miracles, which we should, I think, talk maybe a little bit more about in terms of infinite miracles, as Nursi said, but also their individual perfections, their indications of righteousness, right? Veracious teachings, strength of their faith, witness to their honesty, seriousness, readiness to self-sacrifice. So all these other qualities that I'm constantly looking out for, right? Both their interactions with the community, with others, but also in terms of like how they live, how they practice. And none of these in isolation with one another, right? All of it has to be perfectly in union with one another. And when we do that, like there isn't much that's left at our hands, really. But when we look at, for example, the Prophet ﷺ, like we see all of those aligning up as well. Any other comments? And if not, like maybe we should talk about infinite miracles. How should we understand infinite miracles? I think that's an important point because I want to relate to these miracles of the prophet, right? And all these scholars, all these texts keep saying that prophethood, one of the markers of how you know one is a prophet is miracles. There you go. And that's okay. Like I can there's an extent to which I can verify testimonies, right? Witnesses upon witnesses. But what is an example of a miracle that I can testify in my life, see for myself that is unlimited or infinite, as the author is saying? Do you want to say something? You were nodding very knowingly.
No, actually. So, like since the question come with, like practically speaking, it cannot be infinite since we can count the number of events. So I guess I would take this statement more so in the surface value initially, saying that like many miracles have happened. And these many miracles happened. Well, for the Prophet ﷺ, like there are like 300 to 1,000 like different numbers of narrations for miracles exist. So, but Prophet ﷺ was not the first. So all the prophets have different miracles. Quran mentions them. Quran mentions some of them, of course. But I guess at this moment, we should first see whether we would expect such a thing. Because when we hear it, would we say, well, what's happening? Where did this come out? Like, why? But the claim that the Prophet coming up with is a huge claim, because he is saying that I am bringing you the word of the Creator. So, like, stakes are very high. If somebody is coming up with such a claim, stakes are very high. And how am I going to confirm this? This is why miracles are so important, because since they are coming up with the claim that this is speech of God, I can only receive confirmation from the Creator. But how am I going to receive confirmation from Creator? In this case, it's happening like, the example Nursi gives here is, let's say if king sends an envoy to somewhere, and envoy says, this is what the king says. And then just if the king nods or acts in a special way, then you would say that it's a confirmation. So in this existence, the Creator is constantly creating. Like the creation is already the speech of the Creator. When the Prophet comes up with a claim message saying that I bring you the speech of the Creator, and then says, look, my testimony to that is the Creator is going to change his way of creation to support my point, like as if like nodding. So Prophet has, like Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into fire. It was not like burning fire. Prophet ﷺ has many different miracles, like splitting of the moon, or like water coming out of his hands, or a food which is going to be barely enough for 3-4 people, like hundreds of people benefit from that food and whatnot. So many miracles have happened. And he is doing these acts, though, saying that this is not my acts. Creator is going to act to support my claim. Once I see this, I say, yes, this is something that I expect from my Prophet, because I need to get a support from this actual speaker. Of course, on top of that, today, we did not see those miracles. We do see narrations of those miracles, many of them. This is so one testimony. The other one is Quran as a miracle is with us. So something that we can confirm. But on top of all these, now that, as author was mentioning, the message is completed and many people confirm this message in the light of the existence itself, because the creation is speech of Creator. And the creation itself is supporting the message of Quran. In the time of revelation is coming in pieces. So we are able to see bits and pieces of it. But now, revelation is complete. many people went through the revelation in the light of the existence itself and said that, yes, the one who speaks in here is the one who created this existence. It cannot be otherwise. So now all this information is now available to us. Like the creation is, in this case, is the miracle of the creator, because the whole creation is really miraculously happening if we pay attention to it. So for the people of this age, the creation can become the miracle that's happening before my eyes, which supports the message of the Quran. Every word of the Quran, I can go and check. It applies in the existence out there. It applies in myself. And I would say that no one other than the owner of me and the owner of the whole existence can be able to say that. So in this sense, then if I take it as such, infinite miracles can also be understood literally. But I think in the first place, author was more so talking on the surface level. It's my understanding.
Jazakumullah khair. Yeah. And you know, like even if he was kind of just generalizing, saying it's many, as you said, the more I see how prophetic teachings, prophetic behavior, that is the Quran in action in one sense, right? How that brings that sense of security, joy, into my life, the more I can sort of testify to the miraculousness of the message at hand as well. Yeah, please.
When he talks about the miracle, he says the miracles that was bestowed by God onto them. So it's not that they showed some miracles or they had some miracles. God bestowed miracles on them. I think this is a very important point. Even that changes the definition of the miracles, what we should be understanding from the miracles. When we say miracles, I think the first thing comes to our mind is just the extraordinary event. And a holy guy claiming that I have some superpowers, thus you need to follow me. But the claim is that I have some superpowers. I can fly, for instance. I can do this, I can do that, and so on. With prophets, it's not that way. With prophets, even they have to ask for miracles. It's not that, okay, if you want miracles, let me show you miracles. Somebody asks for miracles, they receive the confirmation, they receive the instructions, have to show the miracle. And for instance, one example would be pouring water on his hand and it becoming more water. He didn't say that, okay, let me just multiply water because I have some powers. Even the claim with the miracles is that my creator, the creator of this water, the creator of you, if he wills, he will show you some extraordinary creation out of this water. I think this is the important distinction between, the miracles of the prophets and some guys claiming some superpowers.
Right, even the givenness of it all, right? Jazakumullah khair. So I think we have about 5 minutes left, right? So any burning questions that you want to have alongside Sister Khadija's valuable comments?
This is more of a thought that's still in progress. But in terms of like the infiniteness of the miracles too, I was thinking about how perhaps, my life is finite when I do think about it, like birth and death. But in terms of, for example, moments, we say there's hours, there's seconds, there's milliseconds, and maybe there's even smaller segments as well. But it stops in terms of naming it at one point. But in terms of like, I can infinitely kind of divide those, and that would kind of give me infinite moments, if you will. So in terms of like myself engaging with a prophetic miracle that might be narrated in the Quran as I try to understand it now, or perhaps a miracle, and as you said, perhaps we need to kind of further define what that kind of points to or what that means. But in terms of, what I'm witnessing in front of me as well, I think I can kind of perhaps just as I have kind of infinite moments of my life, I can also engage, whatever I engage with can become an invitation for me to, like an invitation for me to interact with a miracle as well. In terms of like every single moment that I exist or that I'm interacting with something, by virtue of what it points to, can, I guess, be like one of an infinite moment of interactions between me and my creator, perhaps. I'm not sure, it's still forming, but inshallah that means.
Jazakumullah khair. Any other thoughts, questions? We have a little bit more time, in fact. I deceived myself, first and foremost. There are two. Any comments? If no? Okay.
Let me be devil's advocate, I guess. Everyone's tired. Let me just jump in. I'm not finding the argument very powerful for me. So I mean, like we were going up to this point, the travelers looking at the other creations, animals, birds before this, and trees, plants, and those, I think there's some level I can see it, and I can see how they're saying there's no God but He. But then humans, I'm trying to understand why Nursi is focusing on prophethood and community and the message part of it. Because honestly, if you look at humans, like, let's imagine I'm being honest with myself. If I was like, what I see from humans is not the need for prophethood or the need for a creator or the need for, let's say, a God or like all these different things. If I look around, most people are just living their life, going to work, coming home, living their 80 years or however much years they have and saying, yeah, whatever we could do, we tried. And, this is at least the public perception that I get. Movies, TV shows, everything. It's just like, let's just live our life. Everyone's living their life. So many people that don't believe in God, or even the ones that believe and don't practice, or everything like this, like everyone just seems to be enjoying their life to some degree. The only time humanness ever makes, like, the only way I can say, oh, that doesn't make sense, I say these humans, I can't trust them, or it doesn't work for me, is when I look at myself, because I'm a human. I see whatever they're doing, it doesn't work for me. And then I understand here, so like the way I can understand humans, or that humans can say there is no God but He, to me, I think we could read them the same way we've been reading the other things. Like you look at a mother and a child relationship that are humans, just as animals. Now you're looking at humans, and you see a lot of names being created there. Like you see the name of Mercy being created there. For some reason, this mother looks so much after this child, this weak child. And then you look at all like the technology and advancements and different things, and you see all this wisdom that's being created, all this knowledge that's been creating, and you see like how humans, each single one, billions of humans, every single one has their own life, and somehow they're all being taken care of, just as you are being taken care of. Like I have to always come to myself and be like, I'm a human, and like use myself as like the core there. I think that's the way that I can say humans saying there's no God but He. Like if me looking at the prophets, one, I don't see the prophets, I don't see their miracles. I could look at their pupils, their students, let's say, and I guess to some degree I do. Obviously, I'm trying to attend these discussions, so there is some attempt to do that. But it doesn't seem to be like I don't understand why Nursi is focusing on this aspect of it when the other aspect seems to be stronger or more relevant and more personal, more intimate. Even just looking at myself as a human rather than looking outside. So that's my devil's advocate.
Took one for the team.
Yeah, I have a comment. I guess for me, because it's like we covered each kind of different ways of looking at the same thing, right? Like, because my thing has been like from week to week, we've covered quite many lessons. Some resonate with me and I'm like extremely passionate about it. And others I'm like, okay, like it's not applicable to me. So I think if water isn't applicable to you, there's mountain. If mountain isn't applicable to you, there's birds. If birds not applicable, maybe humans are more what you're into. So I think like in that way you have option. I don't know if you have to necessarily be like, I have to see it through every possible route. Like if I'm not seeing it that way, I've done something wrong. Because then I have a hard time. Not everything appeals to me in the same way, but there are some things that clearly I'm like, oh, I understand what you're saying. I gravitated toward it more. I'm understanding it more. So I think as the writer, in some ways, I would want to present all the alternative possible. But that was just my thought.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you. See, I preemptively called on you, but that was
Jazakallah khair for stoning the devil. So, yeah. So there was some online comment. Can I read that first? So Sister Saira is saying, we must reflect on the randomness of all of what each one of us comes across and how that translates to purposeful and guided living as together, but separate. And that's why all divine signs, positive and negative, as part of decree and as sustenance are important. Each encounter should be perceived as part of divine plan in combination with our receiving free will in our spirituality and religiosity. Said Sister Sarah, Jazakallah khairan. So Devil was saying that why this specific thingy. Okay. Oh yeah, sorry. That was advocate. Okay. So yeah, I forgot what I'm going to say. So I guess since that was a good answer, I guess. Yeah, I think say something. So the ayah we first read at the very beginning was saying that everything in the creation has their language, and with their language they are glorifying the Creator, but you don't understand, which we studied means if you study them, you will understand, right? At first sight, you will not understand maybe. It will look like something else to you. You will look at the words of the word of animals, and just like the famous documentaries and so on and so forth, they will pick up the wrong language. They will say, oh, they are fighting each other, they're trying to survive, and so on and so forth. It means they didn't understand anything, right? As Quran suggested. But if you study it more carefully, you will say, oh, there's a mercy actually there. There's an order there. There's the accounting there. Number of deers versus number of whatever. Somebody's counting them. Somebody is, putting a plan there. You will see. You will understand their language. The same way, the humans. You look at them, they have a language. And again, not necessarily, the language that we articulate, but our whole living. But we don't understand it much. What does it mean? How babies develop, what it means, the relationship between baby and the mom. I mean, you cannot believe, if you just look from an outsider and read how people explains the relationship between a mom and child, for instance, or father and child, and so on. So you say these are crazy people. Like it cannot be true that they claim such things. So there is a language that we can't even say what this creature is. This is so different than an insect, so different than a monkey, so different than, I don't know, a penguin. What is this? Unlike them, she needs to learn things. Unlike them, she has to climb some ladders. And you will call these ladders as ladders of success. But you would say, no, this is not true. I mean, I cannot even make sense of what this creature is. So I think that's the reason starting with the prophet is important. I think the prophet here, it's not just a guy with a message trying to, make people better and so on. The prophet here symbolize the perfect definition of human. He wants to understand humanity, right, in the text. He doesn't want to know Yusuf. He doesn't want to know Aisha. He wants to know humanity. And the prophet, they represent the humanity, the definition of the humanity, not the made up definitions, but the actual definition. So I think that's the reason the prophet, you need to start with the prophet. Otherwise, you wouldn't even understand what this creature is. And then what this creature is telling you. Without prophetic message, what we understood from human relationships, conflict, the pleasure, profit, wars, whatever. This is what humanity is without the prophetic message. With prophetic message, everything is reversed. This is a creature that can become angel. I mean, metaphorical, right? But all other ideologies says, no, we are just animals. We can just better compute. Otherwise, we're not any different than these gorillas, they would say. This is what you understand without prophet. Do you think you can get anything about the humanity or the creator from such a definition of the humanity? You need prophet there. To begin with, you need prophet, not at the end.
Then to Abraham's question, can we say that prophets are being as best among humanity, like best examples of human to take as a reference point for yourself? Because at the end, he was talking about their seriousness, strength of their faith. Like when you look at prophets, like when I consider myself, what is my day-to-day worries? Well, let me try to increase my salary so that I'm going to just buy a house and don't need to pay rent, and then get to, I don't know, vacation here or buy this car. I mean, this is my day-to-day worries. And all my choices are being centered around that. I make all my sacrifices for these. And if you tell me what am I serious about, these are the things that I am serious about. If anything is going to like challenge my welfare of myself or my family, this is the time that I get becoming serious. Otherwise, I say, yeah, okay, yeah, just let's hang around, let's have fun. So in prophet's life, now the point is really they are serious about the life itself. So where do they make a huge difference? What was the like untouchable thing in those lives? This is really putting or demonstrating the value of human life. Otherwise, if I look at your life or my life, I mean, let's say, okay, not you, but brother, because of my life, well, I mean, nothing much to take, I would say. Well, we are barely, let's say, I don't know if at all, living better than animals, because animal is also waking up, trying to get the food and reproduction and this and that. So in this case, really, prophets are defining this exemplary baseline for being a proper human. So in this case, then I can say, okay, yes, this is really, that human is indicating an eternal life. Otherwise, if I look at a person who is oblivious of his creator, I would say, well, this animal, the bird, is a better indicator of the maker, because it looks like this human lost, because there's an intellect in this human being. And since if the intellect cannot find the creator, human becomes the most miserable creation. Like go to Kensington and you see, well, those people are lost. Like their physical body is demonstrating the creator, fine. But since they are so lost with all those valuable qualities that they are supposed to use for good reason, then you say, well, it's a very poor condition. Like it's not fitting for humanity. So it's going to be harder to find my creator by looking at such a scene, considering their other faculties which are just being abandoned. So I guess this is why looking at prophets in this case, I like the word that he uses, their honesty, their supreme seriousness, readiness to self-sacrifice. Like these qualities that prophets demonstrated throughout their life is giving me a testimony to the message that they brought and defining me the value of human in terms of creation.
It's fine.
You don't, it's fine. Of course. You don't have to.
So with birds, for instance, there's no such thing as bad example of a bird and a good example of a bird. Every bird you will study, you have the best bird. It's same with the, I don't know, turtles, the mountains, the clouds. There's no such thing as, oh, it's becoming a cloud. It's not yet there. There's no such thing, right? Every instance is the perfect example. With the human, it's not the same way. The learning, the potentiality, the capacity. Pick one human and you can find an animal there. Pick another human, you can find a saint there. So you need to have the best example.
Are we satisfied? Say it for the mic.
Yeah, I think it was very helpful. I guess my conclusion from this is to understand what a human even is. Like, not to just make a human just another animal, but to understand what a human actually is, we need to find people who actually are living up to this humanness. And then since I am a human as well, whatever message they're giving, it needs to resonate with me, and I will know, oh, now this satisfies my humanness. Whereas, let's say if everyone else is saying go live like an animal, then this doesn't satisfy me. In fact, it leads me to depression or other things. So I see that's not it doesn't feel correct. That's not the path of being a human. So yeah, I see how vital it is to find the prophet or find these humans that can guide me and that seem to have actually lived as a human, and how important that is.
Jazakumullah khair. Thank you. Yeah, of course.
I kind of want to summarize, kind of want to add some things and maybe disagree a little bit. Okay, I'll be quick. I think Abdurrahman's question made me think of a counter question, which is, how do you define humanity? And some of the examples that he gave, for example, technological advancements, I would argue actually allude to the animal state of human. Because, I mean, we see advancements within animals as well. It's birds building like amazing nests, ants making these amazing colonies. So according to the intellect that they are given, they make their life better. They try to, like live in societies and whatever. And we do the same according to our intellect. But what is humanity about? And that made me think of, the purpose of creation. And it reminded me of God's dialogue with the angels when he said, I want to establish khalifas on this earth. And it made me think of how prophets really are the perfect representation of what it means to be a khalifa and what it means to be an abd in the true sense, which is why I think he talked about prophets, because they represent that perfection of humanity, that perfection of abdiyat and khilafat, I guess.
Jazakumullah khair. My quick response to that is that I guess whether it's technological or anything else, the humanity aspect of whatever we might do arises when we do what we do because we're trying to secure some continued existence. We're trying to secure some eternity in all of our endeavors. We're trying to secure some happiness that lasts, or what we might think as happiness, right? Whereas the ants are just perfectly going along with their createdness. I don't think they have a worry of I'm going to die. That's just my quick response. But do we have any other comments? If so, let's save them for next week. Inshallah, we'll continue there. But Jazakumullah khair, this was a fruitful discussion. I benefited from it. Thank you for your comments, thoughts, and presence. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم أن الحمد لله رب العالمين آمين. السلام عليكم.